Do you ever feel like your family is super dysfunctional and messy and crazy? Well, get ready to hear about Jesus' family line. I bet his family is way more dysfunctional than yours. It is super easy to believe that God works in families and in people who have it all together. Well, verse 1 and 2 tells us that this is not the case. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob. We talked about them last week. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. And that's as far as we're going today. So Abraham's son Isaac got a wife named Rebecca, and he did it in a pretty miraculous way. You can read about it in Genesis chapter 24. And they had two sons, twins, named Jacob and Esau. Jacob was the younger, and God actually came to Rebecca and prophesied to her, saying,
"Two nations are in your womb, two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, the older will serve the younger."
So right here, God is promising Rebecca that their younger son is whom the promise of God's blessing is actually going to be for. So time went on, and Jacob went to go find not one, but two wives, and he married two sisters named Rachel and Leah. And he actually played favorites. He loved Rachel more than he loved Leah, and there began a huge rivalry between the two women. They both tried to earn Jacob's love by producing more sons. So Leah actually had 6 sons. She had Reuben, Levi, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel was unable to conceive. She couldn't have any kids. So she gave Jacob her servant and said, "Here, sleep with her, and you can have some sons by her, and somehow they count for me."
So messed up!
So Bilhah the servant had Dan and Naphtali. Then Leah was like, "Oh yeah, I'll give my maidservant to my husband and he can have some kids by her." So Zilpah the servant had some more sons, Gad and Asher. Finally, God allowed Rachel to conceive, and she had Joseph and Benjamin. Guys, this is the family that God promised he would be with and he would bless. Doesn't that blow your mind? And if you think that's bad, it honestly gets worse. Levi and Simeon murder a town. Reuben sleeps with one of his father's wives. Pretty much all the brothers conspired to kill the youngest son, and they don't. They end up selling him into slavery instead. All because their father is playing favorites not only with his wives, but with his kids as well. You probably have heard the story about Joseph, right? It's a really cool story where he gets sold into slavery, but then miraculously, he becomes basically the one in charge of all of Egypt. And because of this, he is able to help save his family from famine. In Genesis chapter 42 and 43, his brothers come to Egypt in desperate search and need of food. And that's when they come face to face with Joseph. He put one of the brothers in prison, and he said, "If you don't bring the youngest son, Benjamin," which was his father's new favorite, "I will not give you food, and this brother will rot in prison." And the only good thing that Judah does in the whole story is he actually offers up his life for Benjamin. He says, "I will go, I will ensure his safety, and I will offer up my life if it comes to it." In the end, Judah does offer up his life for Benjamin for the sake of his father. Does this sound familiar? This is a picture of Jesus. He would come, and for the sake of his Father in heaven, he would offer up his life for us. He would be a substitute for us. Pretty cool, right? But in the middle of this incredible story about Joseph, the Bible actually stops and talks more about Judah and some pretty sketchy stuff that went down with Tamar, who's also mentioned in the genealogy. So who is Tamar? Tamar was actually Judah's daughter-in-law. So one of his sons was married to Tamar, but because of the evilness of his sons, God actually put him to death. That's what the Bible says. Now, at that time, it was a custom that if one of your sons died, that wife, that widow, would be given to one of the other sons so that she would be taken care of. And this is what Judah promised Tamar, but ended up not doing. He went back on his word. And so Tamar did a really crazy thing. She actually dressed up as a prostitute and seduced Judah to sleep with her. And when Judah found out that Tamar was pregnant, he was gonna put her to death. But she ended up proving, you can read the story for yourself, that he was the father. Crazy stuff. the story kind of hurts my brain because it's like, why does God put this in the Bible in the middle of the story of Joseph? Number one, the story of Judah and Tamar show how big God's grace is. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how bad you've messed up. God will still love you and God will still use you. Number two, the story of Judah and Tamar and their sexual brokenness kind of give us a great contrast to Joseph and his faithfulness. In chapter 38, Judah messes up sexually, and yet God still loves him. In chapter 39, Joseph, he doesn't mess up, and God still loves him. Number three, the story of Judah and Tamar remind us not to be too quick to point our fingers at other sinners. Maybe you have a really dysfunctional family, or maybe you've done things that you're not proud of. Either way, it doesn't matter. God's grace and God's faithfulness is bigger than that. And Jesus' genealogy proves it. I hope this encourages you, and I hope that you'll come back next Wednesday for another episode of Weird Bible Wednesdays. We'll see you guys later. Bye.